Good morning. My name is Iman Foroutan, Chairman and CEO of Virtual NGO LLC, a technology company with the focus of designing and implementing online platforms for the virtual operations of non-governmental organizations. I'm also the founder and currently the chairman of the board and executive director of the New Iran, a nonprofit global grassroots organization that for the last 7 years has been a leading voice of the oppressed Iranian people inside Iran. Today, however, per the guidelines established by this forum, I will be speaking as an individual political activist. At the outset, I would like to thank Congressman Patrick Meehan and his staff for sponsoring this forum. I would also like to thank my good friend and colleague in the New Iran organization, Mr. Farahmand Kalaye, for his tireless efforts to organize today's forum. Today, I'll be presenting a high-level analysis and specific recommendations with regards to confronting and ultimately eliminating a present and imminent danger to the world and the United States, meaning the Islamic regime in Iran. For the record, in my talk today, any negative reference to Iran is meant for the Islamic regime in Iran and not the gentle and peace-loving people of Iran who have been suffering under the rule of this barbaric regime for the last 39 years. Also, the following analysis is not only my personal opinion, but rather the reflection of the opinions of the majority of Iranians, both inside and outside of Iran, that I have been collaborating with, and in particular, Iranian Americans and the American people in general who are concerned about jihad, terrorist activities, and the future relations between the United States of America and the Islamic regime. To set up a framework and context for my talk today, I would like to highlight the main principle behind the founding of the Islamic regime in Iran, as stated 39 years ago by its founder, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who declared jihad on the infidels and clearly stated that the Islamic Revolution will not be only limited to Iran, but rather will be the starting point for the export of the Shia branch of Islam throughout the world. In fact, by calling the United States the Great Satan, he was advocating and declaring a jihad war against America. The Islamic Republic in Iran, or IRI for short, has since never denied being a jihadi organization. In the contrary, it has time and again claimed and admitted to be one. Among many examples, I refer you to its Supreme Leader's speech on September 9, 2015, when he renewed the Islamic Republic's promise to destroy Israel and admitted that the Islamic Republic regime is jihadist. But the jihadist IRI regime is still at the preparation stage. It has not yet started and will not start its main jihadi offensive until it gains the necessary weapons and power. Unfortunately, by providing the critically needed time and money to this terrorist regime, the P5+1 nuclear agreement has made it much easier for the ruling mullahs to get ready for their ultimate offensive, and sooner rather than later. The United States, under the previous administration, treated the Islamic regime as a peaceful, civilized, and friendly government while ignoring the people and vital interests of Iran and the United States. Today, I'm here to announce that the continuation of that policy by the US will only strengthen the IRI jihadi apparatus, which, unlike other smaller jihadi terrorist groups, has both the wealth and a large army at its disposal. Once IRI is ready to unleash its jihadist offensive, the world will experience such terror and horror that we have not yet seen from ISIS, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, and all other terrorist organizations combined. It is true that the political and national interests of the United States are aligned with political and national interests of Iran and the Iranian people, but they're totally opposite the interest of the IRI rulers. If the new US administration continues with past policy towards Iran and yields to Islamic regime's numerous apologists and lobbyists, we can be assured that the big jihadi war is imminent and in not such a distant future. As we all know, Iran and the United States used to have a close and friendly relationship until 1979. The people of Iran, unlike their current jihadist government, have been and will continue to be very friendly to the West and to the United States in particular. We all recall that in the aftermath of 9/11, the Iranian people were the only people in the Middle East who, against the wish and suppression tactics of the Islamic regime, took to the streets of Tehran holding large candlelight vigils in support of the United States. The new US administration recently decided to revisit the US policy towards Islamic regime, a decision that I applaud with the hopes that very soon the United States will stop all direct and indirect support of this terrorist regime and starts a clear campaign of providing its moral support for the Iranian people. I believe that by discarding its appeasement policy towards IRI, the US and its allies will set the stage for the Islamic regime to become weaker and weaker every day, and to eventually be replaced by a secular and democratic government by the efforts of the people of Iran themselves. A free and democratic government that would be once again an ally of the United States and the West. A government that would help stop and reverse Russia's ever-growing influence in the Middle East and help balance the power in that region of the world. A new anti-Islamic regime US policy will have the support of the vast majority of Iranian Americans, those Iranians who have fled the brutal rule of the IRI and live in other countries, and certainly the support of the people of Iran. Collectively, we do have the ability, plans, and projects to support a new anti-Islamic regime policy. In my opinion, and the opinion of many others, there are basically three options to prevent the Islamic regime from obtaining a nuclear bomb. One, through negotiations. Second, by military action. And third, regime change by the Iranian people and without direct intervention of other countries. The first two options are not feasible. First, negotiations. One must be very naive to think that the Islamic regime would end its long-standing ambitions and expensive activities in pursuit of the atomic bomb simply by signing the P5+1 nuclear agreement. Resorting to lies and hiding the truth is the essence and nature of IRI. As admitted by some of Islamic regime's top officials, including President Rouhani, by holding and extending numerous nuclear talks with the West, the Islamic regime has been able to buy itself time and space to increase the number of its uranium enrichment centrifuges, further its technological know-how for building ballistic missiles and heavy water reactors, and increase its uranium enrichment levels closer to 20% level. Even now that the extremely flawed P5+1 nuclear agreement has been signed, it is not clear which entity and in what manner will be able to monitor IRI's hidden nuclear activities. Let's not forget that IRI was able to hide its uranium enrichment activities for 18 years before it was caught red-handed. And even then, it was not the US and the West that found out about Iran's nuclear secrets. The second option is military action, which is neither acceptable nor feasible. Destruction of Iran's nuclear facilities by military force can have dangerous consequences. Iran is not a small country with limited military capabilities. Many believe that any military attack on Iran with results short of complete downfall of the Islamic regime and the full destruction of its Revolutionary Guard apparatus will pull the whole Middle East into a major regional war, which could last for a decade. A Middle East regional war could have serious negative economic impacts throughout the world. As a minimum, the flow of oil to the Far East and Europe would be interrupted, causing increases in prices of manufactured goods and high unemployment. But most importantly, the Iranian people, both living inside and outside Iran, who have witnessed the devastations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, have wisely decided for a long time that war, death, and destruction is not the path they wish to choose in order to free themselves from the tyranny of the Islamic regime. For the record, I also do not support any military actions against Iran. The third option, however, is the only viable option, and that is regime change by the people of Iran themselves. We need to empower, guide, and support the Iranian people, who by a vast majority are against the regime of the mullahs, so that they themselves can remove this regime and replace it with a democratic government friendly to its own people, humanity, and to other countries. This empowerment and support of the Iranian people can be and must be done in different forms and from different sources, but must be coordinated and implemented simultaneously by both the Western democracies and anti-IRI non-governmental organizations. As the US administration and Congress deliberates its new policy towards the Islamic regime, I would like to offer 4 specific recommendations that I believe can be implemented in short to medium term. First, firing of all the pro-IRI apologist management and editorial staff of Voice of America and Radio Farda. During the last 8 years, and still continuing, the US taxpayers have been funding nothing short of a propaganda tribune for the terrorist Islamic regime in the form of Voice of America. Second, resumption and implementation of new sanctions against the regime's infrastructure, and mainly targeted against the Islamic regime's top officials, while being careful not to negatively impact the daily lives of the Iranian people. We must remember that the only Western tactic that forced the Islamic regime to sit at the P5+1 negotiations table was the sanctions. Targeted economic sanctions against the regime and its revolutionary guards is an option with minimum risk to the US and its Western allies. Even though IRI terrorist regime tricked the United States and its allies into signing the flawed 5+1 agreement, I was very glad to see that recently the US Department of State instituted new sanctions against the Islamic regime for its continued violations of United Nations Resolution 2231, which calls on the Mullah regime not to conduct ballistic missile tests until July of 2023. I believe that similar and stronger sanctions can be instituted to further weaken the regime in Iran. Third, implementation of a mechanism by the US and its allies to accurately monitor the use of any funds that the Islamic regime receives as a result of sanctions that have been lifted after the P5+1 agreement. For example, no one knows how and where the more than $1 billion in cash payment by the previous US administration for hostages ransom was used by this terrorist regime. We need to remember that the IRI only has the support of those who economically benefit from it. With oil at record low prices and imposed sanctions, lack of funds will weaken this grip over the regime's followers, and particularly among the Revolutionary Guards. And finally, my fourth recommendation is a serious engagement with and support of the non-governmental organizations and individuals who have proven track records for fighting the Islamic regime and have existing projects or new ideas for accelerating the imminent demise of this terrorist regime. The group gathered here today at this forum is a small sample of many individuals throughout the world who have volunteered their personal and family time as well as their monetary resources to fight this well-oiled, well-connected, and wealthy evil regime. Speaking for myself, I'm an Iranian American who migrated to the United States over 40 years ago and have not been able to visit the country of my heritage since then. I'm an example of how an 18-year-old high school graduate can work hard and build a successful life and career in this truly land of opportunities and live among some of the most generous and kind people in the world. And that is the type of country that I wish for Iran to become, a country in which its citizens can freely pursue many opportunities for the betterment of their lives. And that is why I have dedicated between 10 to 40 hours of every week of my life for the last 17 years, as well as significant amounts of personal funds to fight this regime. In addition to my responsibilities at the New Iran organization, my next endeavor in this fight is the Free Iran Project, which will launch in a few weeks after 2 years of hard work. The mission of the Free Iran Project is to provide a central platform for the collaboration of not just the Iranian community, but the world community to accelerate the imminent downfall of the terrorist and evil Islamic regime in Iran, and to be instrumental in the nonviolent transition of Iran to freedom and democracy. If you're interested to learn more, I invite you to visit freeiranproject.com. In closing, remember that in 1979, the Islamic regime in Iran took 52 American diplomats as hostages and held them for 444 days. For the last 4 decades, this regime has taken the entire Iranian nation as a hostage. Now may be our last opportunity to prevent this tyrannical and apocalyptic regime from taking the United States and the rest of the world hostage forever. Thank you.